wasting no time this evening. Let's get right into it.
Okay.
Here we go. It's Hot Mike, Nick Holland in the hot seat. What's up, buddy? Back again and again.
You've swanked it up since I was here last.
Thank you. What do you see?
Well, you got these. You got these little business cards here. Hot Mike broadcast channel.
Yep. Tell your friends.
Rolled those out. I already checked the cigar box. Just some
it's really disappointing,
right? I was kind of, because of the whiskey here. I was half expecting real cigars, you know,
or maybe even like tabs of acid, or
just like a little baggie.
Yeah,
and just be like. That'd be
methadone,
longer.
Dexedrine.
That'd be a longer podcast. That'd be a tougher podcast to have people come do like Wednesday, Thursday nights. You know, be tough.
It's a little bigger commitment.
Yeah, that's once you get the Joe setup, like the whole studio building. You know,
when it's full, what's your poison? And if you really get after it during the podcast, we do have bunks you can sleep it off.
I recall seeing like some random clip sometime, and it was Doug Stanhope on Joe Rogan's podcast. You know, and this is iteration probably like 2 or 3 studios ago, so years ago. But and he was saying that he was like drunk, high on acid and mushrooms, and it was the afternoon, and they had to go do a show. And it was just like, and Joe was just laughing at him, and had clearly been like egging him on to just see how far he would go. Well,
and it's Stanhope.
Yeah,
I mean,
so he's pretty far.
He's a guy with a
further
tolerance.
than you or I is the answer. You know, because that sounds like a nightmare. You know, but some people just have the constitution for it.
Yeah, one of the most killer combos of comics I've seen is Doug Stanhope and Bert Kreischer. Those two getting after it and partying together, and then still performing comedy and doing morning radio. And
scary to think about. Yeah, scary to think about. But yeah, what's up?
Hey, what's up, buddy? Welcome back. So we are in the Halloween season. And we wanted to get together and talk about anything. And we thought it would be fitting to talk about the season, to talk about Halloween.
Sure.
What kind of film genre is kind of brought to the surface. And, of course, it's the horror genre.
So you said you're not really a horror guy, though.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
I don't know it at all.
Really?
But I want to test that today because in thinking about, we kind of landed on this topic, and it got me thinking about, because I've always seen myself as, I'm certainly not anti-horror, but I'm not their market. I cannot quite wrap my head around paying money to be terrified.
Oh, so it's like...
But... So that's how I've always attached it in my brain. But in this most recent exploration, I'm like, well, that's not true. I absolutely love being thrilled and scared throughout the story. Horror is a completely different thing. What it touches on in a genre is different than what I'm thinking of as like a thriller, as something that keeps me
I think
scared and edged.
It's a gigantic genre, you know, and some of it I love, some of it I can't stand. A lot of it I have to be in a very specific mood for.
Yeah.
But then it's such a wide net, because I would count people like David Lynch and like Cronenberg. You know, I would count them as
Cronenberg.
As horror. Especially like the early stuff for both of them, but it's still
for Lynch. Are you thinking Eraserhead?
Eraserhead and but I mean even like, you know, Blue Velvet is even horrific.
Yeah,
you know, and so I guess because
is that a horror or a thriller? Like, that's what I was...
Well, it's like...
Do you draw that distinction, or am I just drawing that distinction?
No,
like,
I definitely, like... Well, because I think... Okay, so, like, take an easy movie, right? Well, even... So, like, Seven is a thriller.
Yeah.
With lots of horrific elements.
Uh-huh.
You know? Everything David Lynch has done is made with, like, elements and instincts of horror.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, probably, like, genre-wise and films he's making. You know, I think it's weird because I think, like, horror, it's the association of it just being monster movies or something, you know? But I think it's a really... Yeah, depending on how... Because, you know, I don't watch... Like, sometimes I'm in the mood to go see the movie that's, like, The Conjuring. Or, you know, like, the jump scare movie theater thing. And that's...
You get that urge. And you will go see it in the theater. Some of the time.
Some of the time.
Okay.
And that's probably, like, that horror... Which is almost like, I don't know, like pop cultural major, you know, like I've never...
Did that avenue start with The Exorcist? Things like the... See, this is where I'm out of my depth, where I'm like, I've never had that urge to go see The Conjuring or anything of its ilk.
I mean, on some level, though, it's because horror, you know, goes way back to the beginning of film. And so they're like, you know, Lon Chaney was doing, you know, he transformed, you know, into the Wolfman even in one take. So, you know, people think about Dracula and Frankenstein and those
Nosferatu.
Those were yeah, so it's like some of those movies were big in the teens and 20s and 30s. And so horror is like right at the birth of film. And then I think, and there are certain things like Frankenstein's and Dracula's and Wolfman's that will always be like iconically horrific.
Yeah.
To the point now where they've been so done over that it's hard to like have a fresh take on a vampire. Yeah. You know, because you either have to be making it particularly young and hip and sexy, or making it a satire, or an action movie too, or something like that, you know. But yeah, I think it was right there at the beginning, you know. And so I think horrific elements are throughout.
When you started talking about David Lynch in particular, I really came to the collection, the VHS collection. I was like, geez, do I have anything that even falls into horror? And my eyes went across Lynch, and I was like, well, some of these.
Well, like, certainly. Yeah, like Lost Highway.
Yeah.
That definitely is. I think that, and that's one of my favorites, is Robert Blake walking up to Bill Pullman at the party and being like, call me, and handing him a phone and being like, what are you talking about, man? He goes, I'm at your house. Call me. And he's like, and then Bill Pullman, and you can look it up, just the little like 5-second clip of it on YouTube. And I wish it was like a GIF right in Facebook or something, because I'd just be using it all the time. Yeah. Because Bill Pullman just looks at him and he says, that's fucking crazy, man. And the way he says it is just, it's one of my favorite.
I gotta go back to that.
And so, yeah, I think, yeah, David Lynch. I mean,
Lost Highway is a movie that I've steered people away from. Like, where I just thought, like, they were maybe like a casual Lynch fan, or maybe they didn't even know it was Lynch and they were a Bill Pullman fan.
It would be a terrible entry to David
And they were
Lynch.
like, I was thinking about checking out Lost Highway, and I was like, no, don't.
I actually feel
pump
like
the brakes.
So what would you recommend? What's the first David Lynch movie you would recommend somebody?
Well, I actually think that Blue Velvet is a good way into Lynch.
Me too.
Not Mulholland Drive. Yep. And I also don't think Wild at Heart is your entry point.
I think Wild at Heart would like establish incorrect expectations.
Yes.
About what you'd like.
Talking about horror, the beginning of Wild at Heart, when Sailor encounters that man on the staircase in the giant ballroom, and he smashes his head. The violence is horrific.
Yeah, I think David Lynch is a great example because he has a knack for horror that is much bigger than, I
don't think Dune is your way in.
No. No.
What do you think of that? Like,
Blue
Velvet.
No, I think Blue Velvet is it. I think Blue Velvet is absolutely because Blue Velvet is both like a single sitting kind of movie. It doesn't have any of the like consciousness jumps that Mulholland Drive or Lost Highway, which the first time you see David Lynch do that in a movie will either entirely cause you to shut down or make you swear up and down that he's your favorite director ever, but it's probably just kind of like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So it's like everybody stays everybody. Legendary Dennis Hopper performance. Peak Kyle MacLachlan. It is both
Baby wants milk.
Horrifying. Daddy wants to fuck. Yeah, he's...
You want a beer?
Man.
Yeah, Heineken.
Heineken? Fuck that shit. Pabst Blue Ribbon. Dean Stockwell singing Candy Colored Clown in that, like, and I don't remember seeing that one, and that I think might have been the first David Lynch that I saw other than Dune. Okay. I think I saw Dune when I was in middle school or high school or something, and just saw it entirely as like a sci-fi movie. And it's very interesting because it's before David Lynch had any right or license to be David Lynch.
Yeah. He was still so fresh in the game. And he turned down an opportunity to direct Return of the Jedi. He was handpicked by Lucas to direct the third and final film, and did I just say final?
Yeah.
Did I say final?
Final in the original, I'm with you.
What he believed was going to be yeah. So the third film in that saga, and Lynch was completely on board.
They should have just stopped. Can I say that? I want to go on the record. Pretty good they should have never gone back, edited in all that extra CGI shit. I was just noticing that you have two copies, and you have like, and one of them looks like the copy with the shit edited in, and one of them is clearly before they ever did that.
So none of these are special edition.
Okay.
Or
no, but there was a period of time. It was like after they made the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
There just came a certain time where you couldn't even buy a copy of it.
Okay, so many of these films were almost all of them. Let's say all of them. Just by numbers alone. 99.9% are purchased when I was like an adult, and I collected these. The only films that are mine from childhood, I got this set in 1995 when I was 10 years old. It is the last VHS. It's actually the last copy of any format where the original films were released. Everything after that, after 1995, DVD, VHS, Laserdisc, anything was all special edition. So this is the last release.
Wow.
And then that's an original release of the trilogy. So these don't play.
Yeah.
But these ones are pretty good.
Yeah.
And all they have is like an interview before with with George Lucas and then Leonard Maltin, and they're talking about the films, but it's the original film.
Have you watched like all the new sequels and everything? I couldn't even keep up.
No.
I just like at a certain point I hit this critical mass being like, wow, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I can't keep, and it's so unfortunate too, because it was like the fandom had built such an elaborate universe and then when they started making like the newest set, they sweeped a lot of that away.
Yeah.
And then they just made like, I don't know. I watched the first 2 of them, I think, that came out.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch the third one, and I watched one of the spin-offs. I watched Rogue One, the spin-off. And
That's a good one.
Yeah, it was.
I love
It was weird because it bumped right into the back of A New Hope, you know?
Yeah,
and
they
so
had
I
to
was
do
like,
that.
I was like, it seems kind of weird to like make a spin-off prequel that entirely undercuts your beautiful in media res of the first thing. I mean, that's it. It's just like, talk about beating a dead horse.
Yeah.
You know, it's
if you're like if you've got a board within carpentry and you have a cut that's missing or whatever, and if I'm making this analogy to narrative, it's like they just had the perfectly sliced board and it just fits in there and it connects all their films together. Hey, it was well done to do that.
Sure.
I just didn't feel like it was necessary.
Oh yeah.
When The Force Awakens came out, I was really ready for it. Like it was like it hit me well. I had a great time. I was like, holy shit, Harrison Ford's back on the big screen as Han Solo. After that, it was like, okay, now we're trying to please too many people. Now we're just trying to...
you can't thread that needle.
I thought Rogue One was great. It really was a throwback to suicide missions, like World War II suicide mission movies. And it wasn't the last one I saw. But when I saw Solo, I realized these weren't being made for me.
Yeah, I couldn't watch Solo. That was like the one where, because... So like Rogue One is fun because you're in the universe of it and you're further exploring the ships and and so all the stuff that like you'd geek out about as a kid, because I remember the little toys I had of the and then it was weird to like start recasting Han Solo and Lando Calrissian and stuff.
That feels weird.
Pin more into that was a little bit.
Like, I love Donald Glover, but I don't want Lando to be Childish Gambino.
No.
Like, I don't.
Too many.
And he actually. Well,
I'm sure he did a perfectly entertaining job.
Honestly, I don't think it's not. He is so much more talented than what he does in that performance.
Well, it'd be
I
really
shouldn't
tough
talk on it. I've really only seen it the one time, and it was.
I mean, it'd be really
I knew it wasn't
tough
for
to
me.
like. Yeah. No, and that's the difference, like, yeah, it's a funny thing watching so many movies where you're just like, oh, I recognize, and then sometimes you remember the one that was like your generation's version of this movie or something. Because that's the funny thing too, is it's like, man, the genre of sci-fi has really expanded and become a much broader and entertaining world with a lot of cool shit in it.
Mm-hmm.
In the years since George Lucas ripped off a samurai plot and the hero's journey and did it on some like. So I watched the new Dune last night.
Okay.
I haven't read the book.
Yeah.
I'd seen the old Dune like years ago. One of the things, and I had some problems with the new movie-ish, I guess, but it was like, but one of the things is I was like, oh, this is a really epic, this is like a really epic Star Wars, and as compared to the first Star Wars movie or something, it's far more elegant, or you can tell that there's a much deeper, much more richly developed world that already exists all around it than Lucas necessarily had when he set out to make the first Star Wars. And that's not like shit-talking the first Star Wars. It's saying that that Star Wars was the one that did it. Star Wars was the breakthrough sci-fi movie that made people, and so because of that, it like jumps over a much lower bar.
Huh.
And Dune, you could tell, comes from this like entire gigantic novel because there's all this context where you're like, I wonder what's going on back there. I wonder what's...
Which was a huge influence on George Lucas, was Frank Herbert's Dune.
Yeah.
And I've read that George was a huge fan of that. But what he did was make this easily digestible. Like the narrative, or even just as much as the storytelling elements of like, here are characters, here are places, here are families, houses. This is like, he made it simple in that these are the Skywalkers. There's an overwhelming energy in the universe, and is the Force. We all feel it. This is my lightsaber.
Oh,
like really
with
easily.
the whole
like,
Dune
this
thing,
is the Atreides. This
weird
is the Atreides
order of nuns, and
yeah.
it's like, and yeah, so it's just like, it's like the far more complex. And there was a lot of things where I was like, well, if I really have to figure this out, I have to like roll up my sleeves and get on Wikipedia, or I just have to read the fucking book.
Yeah.
And if I want it like elegantly laid out, then I should probably go read Frank Herbert's book. Which I may or may not do. It's just always been daunting.
I've started it 3 times.
Yeah.
And I think the furthest I've got was like 33 pages.
Damn. Yeah, that's a daunting book.
It was hard, man.
It's a push. Yeah. It's like a tough.
Yeah.
Because one of our episodes was about adaptations, right?
Yeah.
I actually, because it was spooky season and there was like a period of time. Oh God, I got 2 stories I want to tell at once here. So I'll tell the first one that thought up, and I'll double back for the. I was thinking of reading, because they've made a couple good movies out of them. So I was like, oh, it's October, maybe I'll pick up Interview with a Vampire.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, that's a classic. I picked up a copy, like a little mass market paperback copy of all 3 of them at some point years ago, intending to read them. And like you do when you buy books, they sit on the shelf for years and until it's finally their moment, you know. And I was like, oh, yeah, like reading a vampire book. That sounds nice. Picked up Interview with a Vampire. Certainly you remember Brad Pitt is talking to Christian Slater at the beginning of the movie.
I do.
And they're like, and Christian Slater's setting up his tapes and everything. And, you know, they're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Because he wants to, like, you know, disclose to the world the
hashtag early podcasters.
Yeah.
Interview with Christian Slater's the OG podcaster.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, sure. Yeah. And then they like launch into the story, and as I recall, and it's been a while since I seen Interview with a Vampire, but as I recall, they launch into the story for like a long window of time, intermediately, with some kind of cut back to Brad Pitt talking to Christian Slater, but only a few times throughout the movie, right? It's like they pretty much let you get lost in Brad Pitt's narration of this flick.
Right.
I read the first 25 pages of Interview with a Vampire. Like every half page, almost every other paragraph, they're checking back in with the 2 of them interviewing in the room.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, and just let it go. Let us get into the story, you know? And so I read the first 10 pages. And
Please.
I was like,
relinquish the narrator.
Yeah, it's like reading a novel of the podcast. Where it'd be like, they said over the podcast desk. And you're like, Jesus, I get it, you know? And so I was waiting for that extra layer to just slip away. And I made it 25 pages in the book, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not reading Interview with a Vampire, you know? Put it down, picked up a different book.
So if it's been a hot second since you've seen it, I just want to, like, when it came out, I thought Norm Macdonald on Weekend Update, his review of it, and he even said, he was just like, nah, I don't usually do reviews, but I wanted to review this film, Interview with the Vampire. Only thing I have to say is, not gay enough.
Oh my God, yeah, with their fake nails, and it was very. Okay.
And the crowd like comes down. He's like, yeah. Didn't think it was gay enough. All right, here we go.
Oh man, because so that's a good interlinking story, because what happened, what motivated me to go pick up Interview with a Vampire was on Hulu. I turned on Queen of the Damned.
Mm-hmm.
It'd been years since I watched it, and I was immediately struck, by the fact that, like, the dude playing Lestat in it, who I don't.
Oh yeah, it's a continuation of Lestat.
Yeah, so
that
it's
character.
Like it's another one of the, so he was Tom
but it ain't
Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
And it's no Tom Cruise, but it's another, like, pretty, like, effeminate looking dude, more of, I would say, like a male model from the pages of, like, Vogue.
Okay.
Rather than GQ, you know, kind of, you know, that
okay.
To thread that needle.
Yeah.
Using magazines.
I like it.
But he's like a pretty good looking dude. I mean, he's a very good looking dude in a like androgynous, but it's the year 2000 kind of way.
Okay.
You know? And in that one, Lestat pops back up, decides he no longer wants to live secretly as a vampire, decides to capitalize on his vampirism, and he starts a band. And he recruits, and he pops up, he's in New Orleans, he recruits these people that are these really, like, 90s mod crust punk sort of, like, New Orleans people with bad New Orleans accents who are dressed kind of in, like, a nu metal kind of way. Because, again, this movie came out, like, 2000, 2001. And then, and they start a band, and they, like, almost immediately become world famous, and he's broadcasting things on TV about I'm a vampire and this and that. And the kicker is, again, early zeros, right?
Uh-huh.
Turn of the century. As you might recall from that time, Jonathan Davis of the band Korn.
Yes.
And, well, Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst were, you know, boy kings.
Totally.
At that point in time. Boy kings of the new millennium.
I do remember this era.
And so Jonathan Davis
Yep.
is, like, has a musical credit, but is also the doubled voice for this hot, dreamy teen proto-Edward Cullen guy.
What?
And so whenever he sings for his band, it's Jonathan Davis from Korn's, like, reedy, anemic voice, and Jonathan Davis does like the title card song, and it sounded like not quite Korn, but kind of like, you know, late 90s industrial orchestral kind of music.
It's
like,
Diet Korn.
Like, well, it was like Jonathan Davis singing in front of, like, almost like a 9 Inch Nails or a Disturbed song, you know, if he had just swapped out for another new metal band.
Okay.
And so, and he sings the title song, and I was like, oh, that's funny. It's Jonathan Davis. Then a little later in the movie, Lestat's band starts playing. They both play some concerts, and you also see, like, a music video they made for this fictitious band with the dreamy vampire guy singing in, like, a desolate warehouse. Oh, and every time he opens his mouth, he's lip syncing to Jonathan Davis, which is, to me, it's like a hilarious, almost like a misunderstanding or something, because it's like, yes, Jonathan Davis was a weedy boy king of the new millennia, and I'm sure he got laid a lot being the front man of Korn, but it was never like his voice or he himself would be, like, labeled as sex god, you know, like, at no point did I ever, and I was a, you know, little kid at that point in time, so I wasn't really, like, thinking about public fame or celebrity in these kind of terms yet. But to think back on the late 90s, early zeros, let's just say he wasn't a Lenny Kravitz.
No.
You know, he was not going to be like.
They both had dreadlocks.
Jonathan Davis was
the comparisons end there.
Stop right there, you know? Jonathan Davis was not going to be named People's Sexiest Man of the Year, 2001 or whatever. And so it's like, it's so funny seeing this just like immaculate Vogue magazine male model open his mouth and then have Jonathan Davis, little goblin songs come out. It's such a bizarre, because you go, oh, like a boardroom of people were like, well, this guy from Korn is very in, and so it's just so funny because it's one of those decisions that you like watching from the time capsule of many years later. You're like, wow, that was a different time. You know?
Totally.
Or how huge Korn was could not be understood. Now you have to live then in America and recall that moment in time where nu metal was like huge and the face of rock music for a moment there.
I had Korn CDs and Limp Bizkit. And both of which I ordered out of like CD catalogs.
Oh, a CD catalog.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how I got those.
Nice.
And truly, like, I sent away for them, and I was like, I'm probably never going to see that money again. Like, I didn't think
they got there, though?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah,
$3 bill, y'all, and fucking Freak on a Leash. And
I had Korn and Limp Bizkit and Slipknot and
oh my God.
And I got like, it was like I would occasionally get CDs, and there was a CD store at the mall.
Yep.
We had a FYE.
Oh, yep.
For your entertainment.
Yep.
At the mall, and like would go there, and then also friends with like CD wallets. And just burning CD. And so you get like a burn of a burn of a burn of CDs, which,
the quality's rough.
Yeah, it just starts diminishing. But it was new metal, so you couldn't really,
Like, boy, is that distortion too loud? Who can tell, man? Just cool it.
Of all of the genres to do it with.
Yeah.
I'm sure new metal made it the most excusable.
Okay, so as we were talking about, well, even Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
Is that horror?
I mean, yeah, because it's a vampire. It's like, and I say that's the thing, though. It's like funny because you can think about horror as like jump scares. And then you can think about it as like
it's a cheap trick.
The gothic mood setting.
A jump scare is the "that's what she said" of jokes. That's how I see it.
Well, okay, so you bringing up that comparison. I've always appreciated horror and thought about horror in a very similar way to like comedy, the way those things are related, because being scared and laughing are both involuntary physical responses.
The reactions,
created by art. Something like put this idea in your head or showed a thing to you. And
it's not a choice.
And you have a helpless...
It's a reaction.
You are powerless against reacting to this. And so I've always kind of like... Yeah, I've always... actually preferred comedy a little bit. Well, no, preferred comedy a lot bit, but like had a reverence for both of them,
But don't you think the jump scare is hacky?
Oh yeah, there's things. One thing I hate is in a zombie movie, which by the way, zombie movies, zombie television, zombies, I feel zombies are pretty played out over the last 20 years. But interestingly, film criticism says that zombies are about the spread of disease and fear of disease. So it's very interesting to be like, man, we've been hitting the zombie button super hard 30 years building up to our pandemic, you know? So I've always thought that's an interesting, and the zombies kind of started with like a fear of overpopulation and are like classically read to also be a fear of spread of disease and pandemic diseases. So I think that's interesting because we've been watching a lot of zombie movies and we were not ready. But I hate when you see, okay, great example, and I think this is in one of the first handful of Resident Evil movies.
Okay.
I haven't watched all those, but, you know, watched the first couple. And in one of them, and they walk by, and there's a dead body, and I think it's like floating in a tank of water or something. And as they walk by, the camera stays on the zombie's face for too long as they're walking by. And the music begins to swell. And at this point, you already know what's going to happen. And I know, and every time I watch it now, I know. And when the zombie's eye opens, I still, and like they always pop the music in a little bit.
Yeah.
And I still go, and it's both like, and I both hate it. And then it's also like, I have an appreciation for that. Do you remember, trying to see, I doubt, it's not really like the shade of your collection. Do you remember the original Fantasia?
Not well enough. Disney
and
Strykovsky and
it's all these different suites to all this classical music. So there's one at the very end that I'm almost certain is like a piece by like Wagner or something, and it's this very dark, heavy, and there's this monster or gargoyle that like kind of like lives outside of a city somewhere, and it wakes up and then it flies over the city at night. It's very ominous.
I don't remember this.
There's like a terrible storm. And I remember as a kid, like, becoming addicted to that part of the original Fantasia. Because there's a lot of the rest of Fantasia. I mean, you know, there's the dancing hippos. There's the one with, you know, Mickey, the sorcerer's apprentice with all the brooms. So there's a lot of emotional dynamics to the movie Fantasia. And I remember that I would know, and I would start to like really think about it right when you get the flash of darkness in Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah.
When Mickey has to start killing all those extra brooms he's made.
Yeah.
And I would think, and I would be like, oh no, it's coming. And as a little kid, and some of the times I would have worked myself up and been so scared about the arrival of this monster at the end of the movie that I wouldn't even be able to watch it. And then other times it was like I couldn't tear my eyes away, and I like spent the whole time waiting, you know, killing time through the rest of the movie to get to this like, and so I still, that being said, you know, I'd love to watch it again. I haven't watched the original Fantasia in years, but it was like, being totally obsessed with this, with the feeling of it. Yeah. You know? And that being my draw to, I think, in a lot of ways to horror and the grotesque in art. And that was like the first time that like the bug bit me. Yeah. I'd say things like Akira kind of has elements of like body horror. I would call Cronenberg the specific genre of body horror. I love body horror in the way that it also will give me chills and, you know,
Akira really plays with like radiation damage, like how immediate like
and the
deformities.
Part where, at the end where it's just growing and ballooning and blossoming, and
Tetsuo is just
pain.
It's become this grotesque monstrosity. Oh, okay. So I want to put one. This was the one that really challenged me, where I was like, "Do you hate horror? Do you?"
Okay.
and I shouldn't say hate, but I don't like it. Alien.
Alien, definitely. Alien and the first Predator.
Yeah.
I count both of those as like, and they are like.
Is the first Predator as a
It's like it's an action horror.
Yeah.
But it's like a horror action. It's like I would say that
right.
it's a horror action, and that all of the Predators following it became action horrors. It's the distinction of like which is the dominant thing, because both in the first Predator and the first Alien, you're waiting to see the thing.
My biggest problem with Predator is it's the shot in the opening like 20 seconds of the film, and you actually see the spacecraft enter the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Huge mistake.
Right.
We should not
held off.
We should start on Earth with all of the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we suddenly get to know this? Like, this is knowledge that the rest of our cast doesn't know, and it
hinders us.
It hinders the story and the reveal. Like, we shouldn't know that there is, don't worry, guys, this is extraterrestrial.
But you know what? I've
started
all of the
it for
Predator movies.
People who have not seen it, I start it at the helicopters coming in.
It's funny because I've watched all of the Predators many, many times.
Mm-hmm.
I have a great affinity for both Alien and Predator franchises.
Yeah.
And until you just said that, I'd like kind of forgotten or dismissed. I remember the beginning of I agree with you. It's a much better. It's like it's worse for the inclusion of that movie, but it's corrected in my mind to where that first movie is just that team in the jungle.
Yeah.
And then they start getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so yeah, it's like not seeing the thing is just an incredible, and the waiting, and both of them, both Alien and Predator, and then in their resultant sequels, it's like it's this thing where it's like cat's out of the bag. And it's funny because you look at it, and it's that way for like Hellraiser, which the first Hellraiser is very suspenseful, and then that quickly, Hellraiser actually runs the gamut, where the first movie is actually pretty good and creepy and very withholding, and then by Hellraiser 3, it has like just become fucking silly. silly schlock horror. And I think they've made like 8 or 9 of those things by now. Which
is that the one with no. Nope. Pinhead. I'm already thinking Pinhead. I already was wrong. Yeah, okay. I was already wrong on Lawnmower Man.
Lawnmower Man.
I all of a sudden thought of, I was going to say, was that the one Pierce Brosnan? But yes, Pinhead is what I picture. I've never seen it.
First one, pretty good.
Knowing what you know about my film
I guess
sensibility, do you think I'd enjoy it?
I mean, yeah, based on a lot of the other stuff on this wall. I mean, it's like I think, I swear to God, first Hellraiser is like made between like 88 and 91. Something. Maybe 92, 93 at its latest. So yeah, just by like the era and standards. And it's funny because the Cenobites, Pinhead really became the breakout star of the franchise. They're these creepy demon monsters, and it's one of those things where like most horror franchises become silly because you achieve too great a familiarity with the monster, whereas the aspect of seeing like, of having people be like, what the fuck was that? What the fuck did I just see? Is horror's greatest strength. And that aspect of uncanniness is something that I would say is in most of David Lynch's movies that actually like are representative of the rest of his film and catalog. The guy does uncanniness and that is, I think, one of the staples.
It does feel like Twin Peaks is like a horror series.
Yeah, it's like
you lose yourself into melodrama.
Yeah,
but it always comes back to horror.
It's like a horror mystery soap opera.
Yeah,
is kind of
that's fair.
Here's
another in the space sci-fi genre. Event Horizon.
I love Event Horizon. I was hoping that was the one you were going to say. I fucking love space madness movies.
That one is mad and scary and horrifying.
Oh, and right off the bat, like he wakes up out of the cryo and is like, he sees his wife or somebody there, and she says something freaky. Yeah, just things that have you doubting. You're like, oh wait, did that just happen?
Yeah.
And yeah, I love good space madness movies. Event Horizon, Sunshine.
Sonshine's incredible. Did you see Solaris?
No, I haven't seen that one actually.
So Solaris is the Steven Soderbergh film.
Okay.
And it stars George Clooney, and it's a French remake of like a film in the 60s. Maybe of the same title? No, probably not. But what it is they are in this outpost, and whatever entity is projecting from the planet that they are orbiting is creating a madness within themselves. And what they are doing is they are creating physical beings that now the other crew members are having to interact with, but truly they're only mental, like cognitive manifestations of this person that is not real. So once they're confronted with it's basically like if you had an infatuation with somebody in your past. So you have a very biased perspective on them. And your love for them is because you see them in this specific way.
Sure.
So this entity will create this person based on all of your biases. So it doesn't create a real person. So you're also dealing with, or the other crew members are dealing with people who have irregular jealousy and anger and stuff like that because those blanks have never been filled in.
Wow. Interesting. Have you seen, because that made me immediately think of The Sphere.
Sphere.
I fucking love Sphere.
Me too, man.
And that moment when he like finds all the extra books and then he like looks to it's like Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And he remembers Samuel L. Jackson and
Harry.
Harry. Question.
Why'd you go in the sphere,
like,
Harry?
Yeah, the question of being like, okay, so The Thing is another that I think is just an incredible horror movie. And it's the same question of Sphere. And it's such an excellent horror thing because you both have Thing being like a hybrid from Sphere and what it sounds like Solaris being as you described it. It's like because you have both the monster and then you also have the distrust. And I think all of those things, and
which is human nature kind of thing.
Yeah, and so
it's the nature of the monster, and it's the nature that's within us that is horrific.
And that's a beautiful part or aspect of horror that I think is important. That I think typically elevates the form and that there's films, and it's funny because even the stupid slasher movies sort of do this. They just do it very simply or stick with, but it's like, here is a horrific situation. Watch this set of human beings respond to it. Because most horror, you at least start out with a small team or unit of people, and they go through and then, one or two of them are totally inept and get killed, or totally lose their minds, or turn heel on the rest of the group, or you know, and so it's all of this. It's like this unfolding of human nature, and so I think that's, you know, that's a really continuously gripping part. I saw Manhunter, which is kind of a specific, but I would say that the whole Hannibal Lecter, all of those films they've made,
good eye for Manhunter,
have like
first film that Hannibal Lecter
first
made his cinematic debut with Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter, not Anthony Hopkins.
I rewatched because I don't know if you saw, but the Zodiac Killings were briefly in the news again.
No.
Some people had decided that they'd figured out who it was.
Okay.
Actually, like in last fall, I think a guy had said, or maybe it was the spring or something, but sometime within the last year and a half or so, some French guy had claimed that he'd broken one of the ciphers that had like never been broken before. But all of these things, all these developments, and it's like the FBI, whenever like a big one breaks through the news, the FBI is like, no, none of these people solved the case. We're still looking into things. It's funny because it's one of those things where they've found, and this is terrifying about the real world, is they've found like too many credible people that they've believed to be, you know, it's like there's probably been, you know, 5 or 6 guys or something over the years that some people have like really had their heart set being like, it's this creepy weird guy in the state of California who had the opportunity and means and skill set to murder all these people.
Yeah.
So there's an overabundance of people who would be good for it, apparently.
That fit the mold.
That fit but it's like, and so I watched the Fincher movie, though.
Zodiac.
I watched it again recently, and it
fantastic.
was great. And one of the things that they did, it's a long movie, though, I will say. It's like, it's creeping up on 3 hours.
Creeping.
But it's like, one of the things they did was there's several scenes where you kind of see the Zodiac, right? You're at a few of the killings.
That opening stabbing where they're tied up.
And they cast different guys. I looked it up on IMDb. And
different body types?
No, all vaguely the same body type.
But they're different guys.
But all different guys, because it was like the general description was that it was like this stocky white guy. And then I was looking, and it was all these guys, and you never get a good look at them because they're always obscured in dark or in soft focus. But I was looking, and I was trying to like the commonalities, and then I looked it up, and Fincher had cast like 3 or 4 different guys to play the Zodiac throughout these things. And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. Definitely. And that is like a tendency or a facet of horror.
Yeah.
It's almost like, so like that horror and comedy are both studies in tension and building as much tension as you possibly can. And then you have to like to give the payoff.
Yeah.
You know, one way or the other. And yeah, I think that's interesting because it's a way in terms of art and filmmaking and editing and sound, but it's this synthesis, and it's crazy because you are like forcing people into visceral reactions. You know, I think it's so cool that film can do that. You know,
and we've seen filmmakers who are absolutely masters at doing that, and even like Lynch, Fincher.
Yeah,
there are people who can play with kind of this serial killer mindset and create narrative around it that is as psychotic or sociopathic as their villainistic character is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think creating and exacerbating that that uncertainty in your audience, you know, is just and it's all and so yeah, I think it's interesting because again, like every once in a while I go see, and some of the times I like them or I'm impressed, and a lot of times I'm severely disappointed. Another great one, great first movie, turns into real schlock. Saw. Did you ever watch the first Saw movie? Oh man, it's like
Is that where Wesley cuts his own leg off?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, sweet
As
Wesley.
you wish.
As you wish.
As you wish.
I was like, hard pass, Wesley. Is that the opposite of I love you?
Oh man. Oh, I love that. As you wish. No, it's like it's great because it's defining the. I don't think anybody even dies in it, technically.
Really?
In the first movie Saw, yeah, or like one person does. There's like a couple fake outs.
They all get tortured,
and
but
then
they survive.
Saw 2, a bunch of people die. You know, so
yeah.
It's this thing.
Annie
it's
up.
Like, cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Cat's out of the bag.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Oh man,
I like thinking of Predator, Alien, those films like as, I guess, monster films or horror films. I think there's a lot that lives within horror that is just absolutely like, I don't care at all about this. This is all about the scare of it.
Mm-hmm.
Alien, it's written so well, it's directed so well by Ridley Scott that you have inner dynamics within the team. There's humor, and I'm sure every other film that's made recently like pulls from this playbook. Where, I mean, Predator is its own thing where it's like we don't just have like a monster movie. We've got maybe 15 minutes of like this is pretty funny. Like
you got 2 future governors out there.
Yeah, we definitely have those.
You got 2 future governors. You got
we got action. We've got
a couple good directors. You got Bill Duke out there.
We got
Shane Black.
Shane Black,
yes,
writer
Duke
director,
are running around out there with governors.
Mm-hmm. A lot of talent coming out of that.
Yeah,
and they're having a good time.
Oh yeah,
it's a horror film that's having a good time with itself. The soundtrack displays it. You've got what's his name? Little Richard playing when they're starting to bomb the jungle. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's great because it's one of those ones that like drops you into a different movie.
Yeah,
in a heartbeat. You know, it's so cool. The crazy fucking switch. Carl Weathers is out there too. Man, Jesus.
Apollo Creed? Oh my God.
I mean, my God, you know? It's like, no, it's a great
Will you pass me another beer?
Yeah. I love
Thank you, sir.
Predator 2 as well.
Ooh, yeah.
Danny Glover is kind of like the weird
Bill Paxton.
Yeah, Peak Busey. Oh yeah, Bill Paxton is the only actor to be killed by an alien, a predator, and a Terminator.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit. He's killed in the first Terminator movie.
Mm-hmm.
They kill him when he's naked at the Griffith Observatory.
Yeah.
He's one of those spiky-haired, painted face. Holy shit! And Arnold gets his
gets the jacket, I think, from him, or some of the clothes.
And then he kills him in True Lies, which is fantastic. But it's a fantasy.
Yeah. I know. That's like a great era of Arnold. That's a great Arnold era, too.
My Oh, that's a great way to think of an Arnold era is like any movie he did with Bill Paxton.
I watched some of those Arnold sci-fis. Do you remember the one? It's like him and Michael Rappaport's in it. Is his
Arnold?
like? Yeah.
What?
This is the one. Oh God, it's
Oh, it doesn't.
Is it The Sixth Day? I don't know. It's like he gets cloned. He's like a body double thing, but he survives. It's like a plane crash.
Is this in
the? This is in the 90s. This is a little
in the 90s. Okay,
this is a little later.
20-aughts. Not quite.
Not quite. I don't think.
90s.
Is it The Sixth Day? I don't know. It's got like the cover is like he's got something.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about? You seen that
I
Arnold
think
image?
so.
It's a famous video store image. If you spend any of your life.
So I used to have a subscription to a magazine called, what was it called? I think it was just called Cinephile.
Okay.
Is that right? But it got me into some things that were where it was like, I'm not even watching this, but I'm reading about it in a magazine.
Sure.
And it was like the first time I had ever seen anything about Event Horizon was in this magazine, where I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not old enough to see this like this film.
Yeah, and you'd be able to like it, but you'd look at it and it would kind of like make you imagine about these things, you know, in an even even bigger way. I'm trying to think. Yeah, so what was your early film life then? Were you more of an action guy, a sci-fi guy?
I think fantasy sci-fi.
Fantasy sci-fi?
I was a huge fan of Willow growing up.
That's right.
Willow, Star Wars, Princess Bride, loved Legend and with Tom Cruise, and I guess a little bit of Labyrinth. What's weird is like I missed Labyrinth and Neverending Story and all those things where I was like,
it's interesting because I was just thinking of that because I feel like that speaks to the age difference between us slightly, because like Willow and Legend, I think like a teenage babysitter showed me those at some point but they
and
were
me
not
too.
Like, but I like or they didn't really stick with me early.
Well, they were made the years we were born. Like
okay,
I was born 85. You were
89.
89. Okay, so we were absolute like children shitting our britches. Like by when these movies were being made, released on VHS. So it's absolutely like a babysitter.
It's interesting. Yeah, they did not imprint on me. I remember there were a couple things. I remember having a Super Mario Brothers.
Love that.
With John Leguizamo, Bob Costa.
Bob Costa or Costas? No, Costa.
No, not Costas. Is it Costas?
No, I think that's
that's like the sportscaster,
that's an ESPN guy.
Yeah. No, Bob. It is a Bob, right?
I think so.
Oh God, I can see Bob Hoskins. Bob Hoskins. Oh, thank God. I'm
doing a
Dennis Hopper.
Clap.
Yeah.
John
Jojo
Leguizamo.
Nixon.
Yeah.
You know, it's an incredible cast, and it's so funny because I had such a strong impression from that movie before I had ever played any of those video games or anything. So like once I'd already watched that movie 20 times or something, you know, just my poor parents just like, you know, having to rent the same video over and over again. And then I finally got like a Game Boy or something, and I got one of the and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" You know,
This doesn't match up at
like,
all.
yeah, this isn't. The Rocketeer.
Love Rocketeer. Have you rewatched that?
No.
Okay. Rewatch it when you can.
I was afraid for a while. I was afraid because I just figured it would just be so fucking terrible.
It's way more adult than you think it is. Like all the things that you felt were scandalous in your childhood around Rocketeer, absolutely stand up. They are just as scandalous.
See, to show children. I remember loving it.
The sex appeal and the violence. Like there are so many I
remember it was pretty
there's
violent.
So many gunfights with Tommy guns
and
shit. And there's so much like cleavage
and
sex appeal
and blows up the bad guy at the end by there's the hole in the tank.
Yeah, he flies away.
Guy steals the rocket pack and he uses gum to plug up.
Totally. Yeah. Neville
Excellent.
Sinclair.
Oh my God.
And he was, I mean, that was our James Bond, but 2 to 5 years prior to that.
Okay, and this one might be The Phantom with Billy Zane.
Fuck yeah.
Oh my God. It's and some of these ones I'm afraid to go back to, but Billy Zane
got the 2 rings.
Was so fucking, the power rings. I remember
but he's also got the 45 caliber pistols.
I remember when the
Billy
bad
Zane.
guy.
It's okay you're balding, Billy Zane. You're still handsome.
He's, what a beautiful man, you know, and then he fell far. I think he's doing Sniper sequels or something, you know.
Which the first Sniper is fantastic.
Yeah,
with Tom Berenger.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Zane still has hair.
Got
it
swapped out for a bald Billy Zane, you know.
It's a year and a half before the first Titanic. Go ahead.
The bad guy in The Phantom kills somebody by loading with a magnifying glass that is that when you adjust the knob, knives come out. And it's so funny because it's such a specific way to kill somebody. It's
you take aim.
And so because he's like, I have quite an interesting slide in here, Professor. Why don't you take a look? And then the guy walks up, he takes off his little glass. Oh, all right. And it's just it's such a funny, because it's those little things that are oftentimes ingenious ways that somebody got killed that stuck with me as a little kid, you know? And now it's so funny, the idea of having a how many people do you even get to kill with that? You mean you made this whole magnifying glass piece thing just for the sake of killing this one guy? Or do you have a factory you're sending things off to that's incredible?
Or just 80% of the people who use this piece of equipment, they are people that you trust, and would like to survive the experience.
Right. Who's how do you keep straight, you know, which magnifying scope to use, you know? Oh, no, that one is loaded with deadly knives. Sorry. Close. Yeah, it was...
Do you have a horror script floating in your head?
I have at various points in time. I don't have one now. I've been in a number of, and we were talking kind of before we started the pod, and I'm shooting one now that or was shooting earlier this year and might have
wrapped, maybe
wrapped, or maybe have more to go shoot. Yeah, I wouldn't mind if it was wrapped, but I think it expanded while they were shooting it from being a particularly long short film to a feature. You know, which I think having a feature that probably runs on the shortish side is probably better and easier to figure out where to send and how to show people than having a short that is super long, you know. But it's also one of those things where I have a part, you know, decent sized part, but part with lines and stuff, and was really fun to work with, but I'm not the like thrust of the story.
Yeah.
You know, I typically I get gotten cast as bad guys a lot, you know, and it's fun, you know, and so a horror movie, especially like if you're allowed to bring a little bit of sense of humor to it, you know, it's like. But I had a horror play that I tried to write for a period of time years ago while I was in college that I thought was like a pretty good idea, but you know, it was two paramedics who one of them like kind of blackmails or twists the arm of the other, and they wind up going and picking up people and then killing the people they pick up because he's being instructed by like a demonic force or like the devil to and they were getting all of their communication, all their instructions from the devil from like fax machines and teletype and Morse code and all these antiquated forms of technology. And at the end of the play, the devil leapt through a telephone. And it was going to be like needlessly violent and gory and would have been pretty pretentious if I'd ever finished it or it had made. At that point, I specifically loved, and it's still up there for me, but my own film watching habits have become much less pretentious than they were when I was in my early and mid-20s, as I think is frequent for a lot of people and is typically positive movement.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, my absolute bona fide favorite was like surrealist horror. And so I'm referring to movies like Dogtooth. If you ever saw that one, it was the Greek one that the guy who made Killing of a Sacred Deer
Nope.
and The Lobster. So it was his movie that he'd made in Greece. And then this movie called Funny Games.
Oh, I know Funny Games.
And so specifically, I really liked the American version of Funny Games. And they are just...
With Michael Pitt and
Tim
Naomi
Roth, Naomi Watts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's a brutal... And I'd never... And
I have seen it.
That movie came out like my freshman year of college. Or like maybe the summer after my freshman year of college. And I had never seen a character break and talk to the screen like, and when Michael Pitt like grabs the remote control and rewinds the movie, he's talking straight to audience.
I'd
never seen a movie just like do that so willfully, and it was so extra terrifying. And that was like a specific type of movie that I became very interested in that I call surrealist horror.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, and that definitely like guided some of my sensibilities and interests and still maybe guides the sort of things I write, you know?
That one's a tough one. Then they still all die.
Yeah.
Like it's still so rough.
Just unremitting. Yeah. And
they take her out in the lake
and
she's tied up and Michael Pitt is basically giving his monologue. And then mid-monologue, with her hands tied behind her back, legs tied, he just pushes her off the boat.
And the fact that they just roll up to the next house.
Oh, and then they go up and introduce
themselves. And so you're just like, oh, man, how often? And you remember the, like, crying, shuddering, like, the time that they saw them.
Yeah.
While they were driving up, they saw the two boys with the other neighbors, you know? And so it's like, yeah, I mean, that's some freaky shit. But like the way it played with convention, I loved, and I still love this as a facet of style. And it's something that is in a lot of the movies that I would put in this archetype, or like specific subgenre.
Yeah.
But the fact that the two killers are wearing like all white You know, they're wearing like all white tennis clothes, and things get
tennis,
dirty
golf.
and sullied at the time. And so it's like, and that was a facet in Dogtooth that's sort of in Salo by Paolo Pasolini, if you've ever seen that. There was like one called Goodnight Mommy. There's this great time travel horror movie called Time Crimes. So there's like, it's this whole genre, and I love, and it's typically these movies that start out in these very like swanky upper class, upper middle class kind of villas and spacious landscapes, and the people are always very like cleanly dressed in like white or bright colors and like active wear and leisure wear, and then things just suddenly become depraved in some weird surreal way. And man, it's a fucking ride. And for a while it was my like preferred cup of tea.
Wow.
And so I'd had that with with these two murderous paramedics that I'd written for a while, and I've looked at the script again, and it's like, and there's some good stuff or stuff I liked in it, and then it's also things where it's like, oh yeah, me from a decade ago was writing, and thank God I'm not that guy anymore, you know? And so I've thought and I've looked at and been like, hey, could I ever prop or whip this back into shape? And I've been like, you know, maybe not.
I like when we see a Cliff Booth and a Rick Dalton who take care of a murderous kind of rampage that's coming as a wave towards your main characters. You get a wave back that is like, okay, we're going to completely
demolish.
There's a sense of satisfaction, but I don't think that's not satisfying to the people who love the horror genre.
Well, it's like they I mean, you know,
I want justice, or I want retribution.
And it was very like stylish and slick, but it's interesting because like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and certainly that segment of it, was not at all a horror movie because they nip it in the bud pretty quick. And so it becomes just like, so it's a brief scene of extreme violence rather than being, because to take like an analog to that is something like The Strangers, where, you know, the weird home invasion people totally have the upper hand. And that becomes kind of like the crux of the entire movie. It's weird. There's a very later period Tarantino kind of sense of irony to that ending in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because
and even in Django,
because those cult goons never stood a chance against Leo and Brad in that movie. You know, like, never stood a chance. And Tarantino is both leaning into the sort of like cult Western kind of movies that he has a lot of homage to, and then also the bulletproof nature of Quentin Tarantino protagonists, you know, because it's part of his filmic universe that the person we like and have been following could walk through a room of gunfire totally unscathed. Yeah. You know? And so, like, yeah, it's almost that it's that the peril is the main feature of like a horror movie. And that your protagonists almost certainly do not have the upper hand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Watching, saw up there, Cape Fear is a great, terrifying. You know, definitely a thriller. Definitely more of a thriller drama kind of thing. But man, De Niro is so good in that. And he's everywhere. And he is, and Cape Fear is, you know, for my money, way scarier than like a movie in the Halloween series, because they've made great effort to make that dude seem like a real dude.
He's a real guy.
He's a real dude. He's
been
pissed.
Locked up for...
Yeah, he's a real dude, and he's pissed, and he's been thinking about this. He isn't in some crazy mask. He's in Supernatural. He isn't slow walking. He's just figured it out. He's doing it to you. And then...
Like, I'm going to kill you, counselor man.
Hanging off the back of the boat. Like, holy shit. You know?
Scary.
That is so scary. And that one is so much scarier than a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, yeah, I've seen that guy driving down the road. You know? Some scrappy, mad-looking dude who, like, you can tell the world has just shit on. Yeah. You know? And he's got nothing to lose at this point. And
that's his MO. Yeah.
That's scary. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so this is a different topic, but you seen the new Matrix trailer?
I did.
What do you think?
I will admit I was actually impressed. I thought the trailer was something that actually grabbed my attention. I'm not saying that it's necessarily, once again, is it made for me? Not sure.
Yeah, I was drawn in.
Probably not.
I was drawn in by the trailer on my first watch.
Yeah.
And then I watched it a couple more times and just thinking about it more, and I'm like, this is almost destined to absolutely shit the bed. And there are ways that the trailer seemed to both like echo to too much of the originals, and
you know what it feels like? Eternal Matrix of the Sunshine Mind.
It kind of did. I thought it was very interesting. That was one of the first things Jesse Nylander, who's been on the podcast, it was one of the first things he said to me about
Shout
it.
out to Jesse.
When we talked about it, he was like, I can't believe of all of the shit going on in all of the different layers of the Matrix, I can't believe we're back to the Neo Trinity love story, or that it's been reset, or whatever.
Of them being
he was like, come on, you know, you gotta. Yeah. And that speaks to the fact that Jesse is always a guy who wants, you know, I'm not particularly like a love plot in my movies guy either. If it's there, I'm fine, whatever. But I'm not.
It's a good read on it though.
I'm not watching. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so Jesse's somebody who always wants the visual and the most mind blowing, incredible shit to be like. But I thought that was like summarily that put the thumb on it, where I was like, oh yeah, it is weird. There's a lot of other shit you could go cover in the Matrix, and
that
so
was
it was
their
a little
problem.
bit of a so it was a little bit of a whiffed swing that you just giving us these two. Yeah, I liked them back then, but like, you know, I'm like,
I felt like that was my issue with the original trilogy, in that they made it a trilogy. Like the second film and the third film, what they did to spin it off or to expand on was this romance and to deepen this bond, where it's like, okay, that is character development. That is not universe building.
Right. And it's like, you guys are lobbing out some really fascinating, you know, both logistical and then also just like philosophical kind of stuff all over the place here. The fucking love story, you know, and I get too how maybe to like sell the first three or to be continuing selling, like maybe there's this pressure, You know, you can imagine a lot of people have written great movies, and the people at the big table have been like, hey, where's the love story? You know, nobody fucks in this. Nobody's gotten together.
Well, how do we sell this?
And so it's like I both get it, but then it seems like, you know, coming back to do like a 4. And so that's another weird post is, do you remember that the Matrix, the first Matrix, before the second 2 came out, was like kind of a blue-white color scheme? And then when the second and the third one came, and they came back and they put that green over it. It
was like, this wasn't it.
So
Not
much
originally.
Uglier. So much uglier. It was a much
you're
nicer.
Right, man.
And it was still super dark. The first one was still super dark, but it veered towards blue rather than green.
Yeah.
And then the Matrix, I mean, and the Matrix is there's a lot of things Matrix was just did very well, set a lot of good trends in the movie, but one thing that it did was it really set the precedent for just cooked color saturation. You know?
That was
felt like all the big movies of the aughts were just fucking fried.
Here we go.
You know? It was like, oh, Jesus.
This is what we're going to do. Nick, let's call it there. Buddy, this is awesome.
Cool. Hey, thanks for having me again.
Good conversation. Hey, we'll do it again soon.
Sweet.
This has been Hot Mike, and we're out.